The FedLife podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a fiduciary, fee-based financial planning firm serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of Raymond James. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc. And now, here are your hosts. Dan Sipe serves as a branch manager for Raymond James Financial Services and Serving Those Who Serve. Ed Zerndorfer is our guest and federal benefits expert in the space.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the FedLife podcast. If you don't know me, let me introduce myself. I'm your host, Dan Sipe. Additionally, I'm the branch manager here at Serving Those Who Serve and Lee Sipe and Associates. I'm going to begin, as I always do, by saying thank you. Number one, thank you for taking the time to watch or listen. And even more importantly, thank you for your service to the government, to the country, to me, to everyone. You do not hear that enough, but you will always hear it here. The other person you're always going to hear is the guru, Ed Zerndorfer. He's back with us once again as part of our ongoing mission to reach, teach, and serve you, the career civilian Fed. Once again, we follow Ed's Fed Zone articles. So if you're new, you may want to pause this and head over to the Fed Zone, that's fed-zone.com, and pull up the latest article so you can follow along. Or as I like to say, Ed has taken your notes in advance. So you don't have to worry if you're on the metro or driving, how you might want to scribble something down. So today we're continuing one part of Ed's really detailed coverage in the Fed Zone, again, fed-zone.com, of TSP required minimum distribution rules. Specifically in this case, what happens when a spouse inherits a TSP account. So this can be complex stuff, but Ed breaks it down so federal employees can understand it for what their surviving spouse is going to need to know. Okay, Ed, let's start with the basics. Why is it so important for federal employees to designate a TSP beneficiary, and what happens when that spouse is named beneficiary?
It's very important for a TSP beneficiary, Dan, to name a beneficiary or beneficiaries, because you actually can name up to 20 beneficiaries, believe it or not. 20.
Wow.
20. It's so important. And the reason, this way, the TSP participant has control over who gets the money when the TSP participant dies. Otherwise, they really don't have control. I get very upset when I hear from clients I talk to about TSP, and I recommend that anytime you can fill out a beneficiary form, this is estate planning 101. Anytime you can fill out a beneficiary form, you should. This way you have control over who gets the money. And the person says, well, I was told I don't have to do a beneficiary because the TSP has a default list of default order of precedence when it comes to who gets my TSP account. It doesn't have to be my spouse, but they have an order of precedence. And who is that order of precedence? A spouse, children, adult children, next of kin, et cetera, the estate. And that's not a good idea. I say to them, and the client will say to me, well, why it's not a good idea? And I said, I have an example. I'd like to share with them. Actually, two examples. Let's suppose we have a couple, married couple. One spouse is a federal employee. The other spouse is not. The spouse who's not a federal employee has a nice amount of a 401k plan. They have IRAs, things like that. And the federal employee has a nice TSP account. It's getting a CSRS or FERS annuity. Both are going to be getting Social Security, let's say eventually. So the couple decide that they do not want to name each other as beneficiaries of their respective accounts. TSP account in case of the non-Fed spouse, and the Fed is not going to be the beneficiary of the 401k plan, qualified retirement plan that the spouse is under. Well, and they make that decision. They do not formally fill out the beneficiary forms. And then the federal retiree dies, and who gets the money? Who gets the money? The spouse. The spouse will get it because that's part of the order of precedence. Understand, Dan, that the TSP is not psychic. They didn't know they had this succession. So,
Gotcha.
And by the way, in case the spouse dies by qualified retirement. This is part of ERISA. The spouse has to be the beneficiary of the deceased spouse's 401k plan. That's under ERISA. TSP is not under ERISA. They just go by the order of precedence. Here's another example I share. Let's suppose we have a TSP participant who is divorced, is widowed, has 3 children. And the individual has decided not to fill out the beneficiary form, whatever reason. They've thought default. I heard about the order of precedence. Well, it turns out that this widow divorcee has 3 children, and they had a falling out with one of their kids. And they decided they do not want to give that child anything. No TSP, nothing. So the divorcee, widower dies. Who does the TSP give the money to? Who inherits the TSP account? Each child gets 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Gotcha.
Why is that? Like I said before, the TSP is not psychic. They didn't know that the deceased TSP participant had a falling out with one child.
Gotcha.
This is order of the precedent. I don't understand how individuals not just go by order of precedence. Anytime you can fill out a beneficiary form, whatever it is, this is estate planning 101. Fill it out and also make sure it's up to date. Current. Okay. So that's why I emphasize filling out a TSP beneficiary form is very important. Now, when it comes to naming a spouse as beneficiary of your TSP account, there's a difference between when a TSP participant dies, when the spouse is going to be inheriting all or a portion of the deceased TSP participant's account versus a non-spouse. There's an important difference, because when a spouse inherits a TSP account, and this includes both a traditional TSP and raw TSP, something called a beneficiary TSP account is set up. A beneficiary TSP account is set up. Exactly what is a TSP beneficiary account? A TSP beneficiary account is almost the same thing as a regular TSP account. In what sense? The spousal beneficiary does not have to take any money out, does not have to take any money. They can leave it alone. They can make interfund transfers. They can make withdrawals if they need to. They need to. The money is invested in the same funds as was, except that if the TSP participant had invested in the window,
mutual fund window,
there's 8,000 funds out there. The beneficiary account will not include that.
Gotcha.
Anything in the TSP mutual fund window will be spread among the CSIFG funds in the same percentage as the TSP participant had. Okay. Now, what about RMDs, requirement of distributions? Anybody, and when you inherit a TSP account, like the spouse here, eventually the spousal beneficiary has to take out an RMD, a requirement addition from their beneficiary account.
Gotcha.
Now where it gets complicated. That gets a little complicated. When does that RMD have to take place? That's the question now. When does an RMD? So the date in which the surviving spouse has to start taking RMDs depends on whether the deceased spouse, this is the TSP participant, when did the TSP participant die? Before or after his required beginning date? What is the required beginning date? The required beginning date is April 1st, following the year an individual turned, now it's 73. The RMD rules apply to the TSP, traditional TSP, traditional 401k plans, traditional IRAs. Each one has its own RMD. So we're talking about the TSP now. So a TSP participant has to take out an RMD April 1st, following the year they became 73 now, 73. It used to be 70, was raised to 72. It's now currently 73 for anybody born between January 1st, 1951 and December 31st, 1959. If a TSP participant was born anytime after December 31st, 1959, their required beginning date is April 1st, following the year they turned 75.
Gotcha.
Now, one other complication is when it comes to the TSP RMD, if a TSP participant has reached his or her required beginning date, but is still working, they're still in federal service, I should say.
Sure.
They do not have to take an RMD while they're still in federal service. Their required beginning date would be April 1st, following the year that they retire. There's a big difference here. So I know someone who is 75 years old, still in federal service, and his required beginning date was April 1st, following the year they turned 72. That was a couple of years. That was a couple of years ago. He was still working. He did not have to take an RMD. So he asked me, when do I have to take my first TSP RMD? I said, when are you going to retire? He said, December 31st, 2025. I said to him, that's not good. He said, why? Because you have to take your first RMD by April 1st, 2026. And you're going to have to take another one by December 31st, 2026. He said, what do I do? I said, postpone your retirement date to January 31st, 2026. This way you have to take your first TSP RMD by April 1st, 2027. That's not it.
Gotcha.
Okay. So the TSP RMD is a little complicated.
Sure.
Okay. We're talking about when the beneficiary, the spousal beneficiary or participant, when he or she has to take their first TSP RMD. It depends on when the TSP participants, when they were their date of birth and when they died. I have a table in this column, Table 1.
You do.
And I try to summarize everything. And again, this column came out a couple of weeks ago. So go to the Fed Zone for individuals who are in need to see this table. Please go to the Fed Zone. And it's the Table 1. It's entitled TSP RMD, specific age and required beginning date. And it shows that the table has four columns. TSP participants' date of birth is broken down before July 1st, 1949. They were born between July 1st, 1949 and December 31st, 1950. Then we have the TSP participant born between January 1st, 1951 through December 31st, 1951. There's a reason for that. I'll get to it in a moment. And then we have TSP participants who were born between January 1st, 1952 and December 31st, 1959. And the last category is anybody born after December 31st, 1959. And I point out in the second column, what is their specific age that we're talking about when it comes to required beginning. April 1st, following the year they become this age. 70 and a half for anybody born before July 1st, 1949. Anybody born between July 1st, 1949 and December 31st, 1950, 72. Anybody born during 1951 is 73. If you're born between January 1st, 1952 and December 31st, 1959, it's 73. If you're born after December 31st, 1959, it's 75.
Gotcha.
But then I have a third column.
You do indeed.
Entitled Employment Status.
Yep.
As of 12/31/2024. Now, why am I using as of 12/31/2004? The current year, anybody who has to take a TSP RMD, it's calculated based on your account balance as of December 31st, 2024. This is an RMD for this year, Dan. This year, 2025. Next year's TSP RMD will be based on the account balance as of December 31st, 2025. So anybody taking RMD. But just remember that if somebody's still working and they've reached that age, that specific age I mentioned, you don't have to take they don't take the TSP RMD. I know somebody who is now 78 years old. He loves his job in federal service. He continues to work. His original TSP, the RMD, required beginning date, was April 1st before the year he became 70 and a half. That was over 10 years ago. He's still working. He's still working. So that's a very important table that individuals who are, especially if they have to take an RMD coming up this year or in the very future, should look at that table.
Absolutely.
Then we get into the issue. Now we're talking about the TSP participant.
Yep.
The TSP beneficiary participant. When does he or she have to take their first RMD?
It depends.
It depends. And I have another table then. It's table 2.
Yes, you do.
Which we should look at. Okay. So table 2 is entitled The Beneficiary Participant's RMD Deadlines when Spouse TSP Participant Dies before their required beginning date. Okay. And there are only two columns in this table. The first column says, if at the time of death, and the second column is entitled, the beneficiary participant must begin receiving RMDs by, and that's what it's broken down to. And there are 3 possibilities here. Okay. If at the time of death, let's say the spouse, this is the TSP participant, this is the spouse who died, the TSP participant who died, would not have reached a specific age before the end of the year. Then the beneficiary participant must begin receiving RMDs by December 31st of the year. The spouse would have reached the TSP RMD specific age. Dan, let's do an example. It's a lot easier. To understand. I like to learn by examples. And that's why I put lots of examples in the columns. Okay, in my columns. So here we go. Okay. So we have, let's do one example here. Okay. Okay. So we have Sheila. Sheila's 68 years old. She's under her, she's the TSP participant. She's married to Nolan, who's 70. Sheila died in May 2025 at the age of 68. What would have been Sheila's required beginning date? Her required beginning date would have been April 1st, following the year that she turned 73. She's 68.
Gotcha.
Okay. So now Nolan, who is Sheila, that's her surviving, her spouse. He has a TSP beneficiary account, spousal beneficiary account. He's the only TSP beneficiary. When does he have to make his first TSP beneficiary account RMD? Well, he must take his first TSP beneficiary account RMD by December 31st of the year that Sheila would have become age 73. She's 68 in 2025. When is she going to turn? She would have turned 73 in 2030. So, in the year 2030, Nolan will be age 75. age 75. So how will Nolan's 2030 TSP Beneficiary Account RMD be calculated? It's a little complicated. Well, we have to go back to the TSP, to the traditional TSP. I want to add one thing. Effective January 1st, 2024, TSP RMDs are based only on the traditional TSP account balance. Anything
Gotcha.
that's in your Roth TSP is not going to be included in the calculation of your TSP RMD. This is long overdue, Dan. But
Sure.
part of Secure Act 2.0, this is one of the provisions in Secure Act 2.0, it changed the rules regarding the calculation of RMDs for qualified retirement accounts, including the TSP. So only their traditional TSP. So Nolan's traditional TSP account balance as of December 31st, 2029, because it goes back to the previous year.
Gotcha.
And it's divided by a life expectancy factor. What is the life expectancy factor? It's the IRS single life expectancy table for a 75-year-old. Why? Because Nolan's going to be 75 in the year 2030. Remember, he was 70 this year when Sheila died. 5 years from now, he's going to be 70. So the IRS single life expectancy table for 75 turns out to be 14.8. So again, Nolan would calculate his TSP for the year 2030 based on whatever the traditional TSP account balance as of December 31st, 2029, divided by 14.8 as a single life expectancy factor for a 75-year-old. Then for the year 2031, how will Nolan compute his TSP beneficiary RMD amount? Take the account balance as of traditional TSP account balance as of December 31st, 2030, divided by the single life expectancy factor for a single person who's 76 years old. I think I have that. No, I don't have. You can go to the IRS website. They have those amounts. All right. So that's one thing. Now we got another scenario here we got to talk about, depending on when the TSP the TSP participant die. If the TSP participant, the spouse, is the one who died, has the TSP account, reached the applicable age or would have reached that age before April 1st of the following year and had already separated from federal service. Already separated from federal service. Then the spousal beneficiary participant must begin receiving RMDs by December 31st of the year following the year of the spouse's death. It makes no difference if the spouse already had satisfied the RMD for the year he or she reached a specific age prior to the required beginning date. Okay, so let me give an example of that one. Okay, with an example for that one. Carl, he retired from federal service on September 30th, 2024 at the age of 72.
Gotcha.
Carl is married to Jennifer, who is also age 72. Now, Carl died suddenly in May 2025, a few months before his 73rd birthday.
Gotcha.
He's reached it. He's reached his birthday. Jennifer is the sole beneficiary of Carl's account. Carl had not taken his first year traditional TSP RMD at the time of his death. Jennifer, as the beneficiary, must take her first TSP beneficiary account RMD by December 31st, 2026. This is December 31st of the year following when Carl died. She's going to be 74 years old. Jennifer's first year TSP beneficiary participant RMD will be calculated as follows. Traditional TSP account balance as of December 31st, 2025. This is the year 2026. Divided by the life expectancy factor. What is that life expectancy factor? It's IRS single life expectancy. It's from the IRS single life expectancy table for a 74-year-old, which is 15.6. 15.6. And then Jennifer will calculate her future TSP beneficiary participant RMDs in a similar future. I want to point something out, that when you are calculating your TSP RMD, you retired from federal service, you've reached your required beginning date. How do you calculate how does the TSP calculate your RMD? Take your account balance as of December 31st of the previous year and divide it by a life expectancy factor. And what is that life expectancy factor? It's the IRS's uniform life expectancy factors, which assumes that your beneficiary it's a joint life expectancy because your beneficiary is within 10 years of your age.
Gotcha.
Well, that beneficiary factor is larger than the single life expectancy factor. 20, like for example, when you're 73, I think it's when you're 73, I think that the factor is 24.6. The point I'm trying to make is the life expectancy factor is larger for the uniform table compared to the single life table, meaning that the RMD is going to be less. That's something you got to consider that. And finally, we have the scenario, I call it the scenario, where a spouse had not reached the applicable age and had not separated from federal service. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the details of that, but it's very similar. There's examples there's example of that one as well. And in fact, maybe I should do it. I'll do the example. We have Paul. He's 78 years old. He's married to Elizabeth, who's 76, and was a federal retiree with a traditional TSP account. He died suddenly on March 2nd, 2025. Times that had not taken. This is a different example. I'm sorry. I don't have one for that one. Sorry about that. So as you see, Dan, it's not easy. It's not easy. Now,
this is really complex stuff.
To say this. I assume that the TSP service office will compute the spousal beneficiary participants RMD every year like they do for TSP participants. They do that. The TSP every year in January sends out a letter to a TSP participant who's reached his or her required beginning. This is the amount of your TSP RMD for this year. And if the TSP participant ends up not taking it or does not take out enough, guess what the TSP does? In early December, they will send out whatever that person's TSP RMD is, the balance or the whole amount. Dan, I don't know of any retirement plan. I don't know of any traditional IRA custodian who does that automatically. This is a virtue of the TSP. Now, my point I want to make is, will they do that for the spousal beneficiary participant? I assume they do. So if this is so complicated, a spousal beneficiary participant can't follow this or doesn't want to follow it, whatever, or maybe they don't want to give it to their tax advisor to figure out what the RMD is. Rest assured that TSP will do it for them. I assume that's the case.
Gotcha. So Ed, what should our feds be doing now to make sure their spouse will be prepared, should something happen?
All right. If you are first of all, I go back to what I said at the beginning. Name a benefit. You got to name a beneficiary. That's the bottom line. And as part of your estate plan, understand what what has to be done now, and knowing the rules for the RMD, for yourself, and for your spouse, and for your non-spouse. I have a separate column coming out on non-spousal beneficiaries because they don't get a beneficiary account. The rule is for non-spousal beneficiaries, like adult children, that they have to withdraw their entire inherited TSP account within 90 days. Because
Ouch.
If they don't, it's going to be paid out. Traditional TSP, Roth TSP. Traditional TSP, that could create a huge tax liability. But non-spousal beneficiaries have an option. they can directly roll over their inherited traditional TSP account to what's called an inherited, or also known as death IRA. And they have more, and that's a separate column. I don't have time to talk about that. But please, my advice is to all TS participants, understand these RMD rules. Talk to your tax advisor. And by all means, include this as part of your estate plan. And particularly if you're a married couple, you definitely should sit down, review all the rules, and as part of your estate plan, have this included. Talk to your estate attorney. And if you still aren't sure what to do, talk to your advisor. Talk to, again, getting back to serving those who serve. The advisors at Serving Those Who Serve will be more than happy to go through all the options when it comes to this and calculation of RMDs. Don't do this on your own. Communicate.
Absolutely.
Have questions, bring them up. This is so important because the penalties for taking not taking your RMD, if you don't take it, TSP will not happen. But like I said a few moments ago, your traditional IRAs are subject to RMDs. You have other qualified retirement plans. The penalties are huge, 25% penalties, perhaps, if you don't take your RMD. That's money going away. This is something you just can't ignore.
Definitely. And folks, this is probably a great time to mention, we got webinars. We have free webinars that dig into stuff like this. We got TSP webinars. We got survivorship webinars. So don't be a stranger to those. Once again, Ed, I got to say thanks on behalf of all feds. Again, I don't know of anybody that's putting this kind of detail out there for folks. If it was tough to follow, don't worry, folks. You can rewatch or re-listen with the FedZone article in hand. It'll make a lot more sense for you then. We generally encourage people to do it that way anyway. This kind of information can really help you, your spouses, from making some costly mistakes. Ed, I don't know how to keep it all straight, but I'm glad you do, and I'm glad you do it with us.
My pleasure, Dan. It's always a pleasure working with you and the people Serving Those Who Serve, writing the FedZone columns. I'm glad to get it out. Again, these topics here, dear to my heart. It's my circumstance. I'm over 65. RMD, I'm subject to RMD. I want to help fellow feds, everyone in terms of understanding the rules, trying to make it easy to understand the FedZone. I write these columns so people understand them. Please take advantage of it. Read it. Read all the columns. And you'll learn a lot by reading the columns.
Absolutely. And of course, Ed, this makes you the cool grandfather because you have a podcast. So the grandkids can always watch that. Folks, that is a wrap. We are Serving Those Who Serve. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, wherever. Please remember to share this with your friends and strangers. And don't forget those live webinars. I already touched on them before. Just head over to the SWS website. So you'll see the webinar button. Click it. It brings the whole menu up. We have a ton there, and they are all complimentary. And yes, the guru will come to you. Reach you where you are, teach you where you are, and above all, serve you where you are. Sign up for one, sign up for all, and share that page with your friends. I guarantee you they will thank you. Be sure to read Ed every single week in the FedZone. We cover 2 of his articles every month here. So that means there's at least 2 more, sometimes 3, and they are all gold. You can find that at fed-zone.com. So signing off, as I always do, for Ed, the crew at Serving Those Who Serve, and me, Dan Sipe, good luck, Godspeed, and above all, please remember, it's your FedLife. Make it a great one because you deserve it. Stay well, everybody. We are out.